Hey everybody, DM Jim here, and welcome to a new episode of the Tabletop Engineer. This project's going to be sort of an upgrade or modification to a previous project. I'll put a link up on the screen here. The mini display was a small picture frame about this big, about 1.5 inches deep, and it could hold 2 miniatures in it, sort of in a little dungeon display. I'd show you one, but I've given all mine away. Even the one I made for myself, I gave away as a gift recently. I also made them for some of the merchant supporters over at Patreon of Bexham's Bazaar. And so I'm getting quite good at making the little ones. But here's the thing. Whenever each week as I'm planning the Wednesday night D&D game that I run, as the DM, I frequently, develop the night's encounters with NPCs or monsters, creatures. And typically what I do is I pull them off of my miniature collection, or I print them out on cardstock and, make little paper minis. And I just have them sitting out, ready to be scooped up and taken to Wednesday night game. Sometimes I have been guilty of this. I have forgotten a mini or two, or more than two, that I needed, and I've had to improvise. I don't like to do that. I tend to keep my minis sort of scattered here on the desk as I'm developing the night's adventure. And it occurred to me that what would really be nice, you can't see it, but right here in front of me is a pegboard. And I've sort of freed up some space on the pegboard recently during a cleanup of my workshop. And it occurred to me that what would really be better for me is a single place to put all the minis that I'm going to be using for a night's adventure. And so what I'm going to do in this project is I'm just going to show you the steps I did to make a slightly larger version of the mini display. It uses a 10 by 8 picture frame, and it's just going to have a little bit more in it where I could place miniatures. Now I can use it as a display, sort of a mini diorama, but really it's for me to keep the minis in front of me in my vision as I develop the night's adventure, and also a single place to store them so I don't forget them when it's time to pack up my stuff and head out. So just follow along here. We're going to head to the tabletop, and I'll show you how I made a slightly larger version of my mini display for holding a night's worth of NPC and creature miniatures. Let's go to the table. To begin this project, I took an 8 by 10 frame and used it as a template to cut out a piece of chipboard for the very back. I fit it in to make sure it fit, and once I was happy with that, I used some additional chipboard to cut the two sides, ceiling, and roof. Now this requires more than a single 12 by 12 inch of chipboard, so I had to use blue painter's tape to hold these extra pieces in place so that they could fold up to make the box. It did require occasional trimming just to make sure everything fit well. I would do occasional test fits into the frame and trim pieces back, but once I was happy that it fit, I had that. It was ready to go to the foam portion of the project. I used 1/4 inch foam here. I cut an 8 by 10 inch piece of foam to glue onto the back. I used the Styro Goo brand of glue that holds foam really well, and I taped up the edges and used some weights to hold it down. The Styro Goo requires a little bit of time to dry. It's not like hot glue. So while that was drying, I cut the sides and the ceiling and roof to length, and then I glued those in place also using the Styro Goo. Now there is a gap between the sides, the ceiling, and the roofs. When you fold it up, if you don't leave that gap, it won't work. And what this means is there'll be a slight overhang of the foam, and you can just trim that off later after the glue is dried. Once the glue dried on the walls, ceiling, roof, and back, I took a blade and just created a brick pattern on the sides and the back wall, not the roof and ceiling, and just roughed it up with some aluminum foil to give it that stone texture. Next, I black bombed the entire thing. I recommend giving it 2 coats just to get it really good and dark. Once the black paint was dry, I used a sponge and some light gray paint
and then just stippled it on all over. You could use more colors than gray, but I was just going for this flat gray color. There will be some cutting into it later, so I had to go back and add in some more gray here and there. Next, I used some more 1/4 inch foam to create a series of walkways, and these were just cut to various random lengths, just based on what I thought looked good. I notched the ends of them to sort of look like stone blocks, and then I used aluminum to rough them up, and I black bombed them with black acrylic paint. After the paint dried, I inserted the walkways into the frame in using styro goo, let it dry really well, and when the walkways were completed, I began work on a lighting element. These are from Fat Dragon Games. It is a LED torch, and it requires a battery holder, and all this is 3D printed. If you don't have a 3D printer, you could just skip this step, but it did require me to cut out a hole, 2 holes actually, for 2 torches. I cut them out of the foam, and then I bored a hole through the chipboard in the back, and this is where the LED would stick through to allow the torch to shine. This required some trial and error testing of just widening the hole to make sure the LED was bright enough. And then I painted around the torches black to match with the background. Here you can see that I'm just test fitting some columns into the beneath the walkways. I'll include a link below for a video where I make these little columns, but just make a bunch of them, whatever looks good, and then you just glue them in. Push them all the way back against the wall. That way they're not in the way. And then once again, I used a sponge to hit the edges of the walkways, and I used a brush to get around the torches where I painted black to make them blend in. And then I just added more columns, and that was it.
Okay, so I'm going to call this the medium mini display versus the mini display. This one will easily hold probably 10 or 12 minis, standard size. I basically just put a bunch of floors in there. You can see some columns mounted, a little rope with some knots tied for climbing, some chain here. But the real thing I want you to see are these 2 torches in there. These torches are part of a 3D printed wall section from Fat Dragon Games. It basically is an LED behind a torch, and it lights up. It uses these little coin batteries, okay? And on the back, I've glued 2 of the holders that Tom Tullis designed. Basically, I just cut a hole in the foam and through the chipboard, cut out just the torch piece, and mounted it. And let's see what it looks like. I'm gonna pull this back here. I'm gonna put one in, and we'll put the other in. Let's turn off the light. Okay, kind of silly. These batteries will last a long time because LEDs, they last forever. But if somebody were coming to visit the lab, and I wanted to display some of my minis, this is going to hang on the pegboard that's in front of me here. I'll mount something on the sides here so that it goes into the holes, and I can just stick the batteries in and let the torches light. Now, I can't find them. I had flickering LEDs, which gave the torches a flickering. I'm going to look for those, and it's easy to switch those out here. But these are 3D printed. You don't have to do that. You could just add different elements to make your own. But I'm pretty pleased with it. It's definitely bigger than the mini display, and will give me a place to put my Frostgrave Warband, which is about 12 members. Or what I really designed this for is here at my work table, when I'm planning a D&D session, I frequently am pulling minis from my collection or making paper miniatures. This is the place in front of me that I'm going to store them as I, add them to the night's adventure, and it will remind me to not forget them, because I have left games, or I've left for a game many times and forgotten key minis. So this hopefully will jog my memory to not forget them. Very simple, nothing fancy, a cheap cheap 8x10 frame, chipboard for the back, 1/4-inch foam for the walls and the floors. And then these columns I've made in previous videos. I'll try to hunt it down and put a link below if you want to go back and see how those little columns were made. Very, very simple. And then, of course, I'll put a link to the torches, that add a nice little touch to it. All right, well, this is DM Jim. I will be out of town. Well, yeah, I'm out of town next week. So I've already pre-recorded a video for next week, a Q&A session that will go live next Friday. And then I'll be back next weekend or the following weekend. It gets all confusing when you do these things ahead of time. I'll be back and ready for another craft. As a matter of fact, I've got a pretty cool one I think that you're going to like. I hope you like it. I hope you'll try to make one. If you do, I'd love to see your version of it. Again, 2 inches deep, really easy to make, real inexpensive, and definitely something that would look good on your wall or on the desk, just a place to store your miniatures. All right. I look forward to your comments. I will read them and respond. And check out the Tabletop Engineer Facebook page. Every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, I post freebie PDF cards that you can print out for magic items, relics, and monuments. I also put those on the Patreon page for Bexham's Bazaar magazine. Bexham's Bazaar magazine, it's hard to believe, issue 7 is coming out in just a week, a little over a week, July 1st. And this issue number 7, is huge. I mean, I'm probably going to break 130 pages easy. All of my contributors hit me, with stuff. Sometimes, they take breaks and stuff, but man, issue 7, I've got a load of stuff to share with you in that magazine for my contributors and my own stuff. And I think you're going to like it. It's totally going to be worth the $2 that subscribers pay, or $3 at Drive-Thru RPG. But if you do buy the magazine at Drive-Thru RPG for $3, please do consider subscribing over at patreon.com/Bexham's Bazaar. $2 an issue. And the reason I'm imploring you to do this is my decision to whether to continue Bexham's Bazaar next year will depend on number of subscribers. I don't want to raise the price, but I may have to if I can't get the subscriber base up. But it won't go up by a lot. And given that every issue is about 100 plus pages, I think it's totally a good value for what you get. And it's a good read. I think it's a good read. It's something that I would just take and go sit down and read it cover to cover. So I hope you do too. All right, that's all I have for you. I am out of here in just a day and a half and going to go camping, and I will talk to you when I get back. Take care.